I've got with me here today a brand new 2020 Subaru Outback Touring. Now you might be thinking, how do you know it's a 2020? Isn't this anywhere between 2015 and 2019? Well, actually, despite its looks, the 2020 Subaru Outback is an all-new model with a new powertrain and completely redesigned with lots of new tech features. I'm really excited to show you guys what's inside and what makes this a fantastic small SUV. Now, starting at the front of this Outback, it's got a very similar style to Outbacks of years past. We've got the black plastic bumpers and body cladding, which extends all the way around, and then some new tech type features. Actually inside of the Subaru logo is where the radar sensor for the radar cruise control is located, and then we also have here a front-facing camera, which is used for the parking system. Now, coming down a little bit lower, the lower grille actually does feature AGS, active grille shutters, which is a nice feature for a couple extra tenths of an mpg, I guess. And then this silver trim here does indicate that there might be some kind of underbody protection, but it is all plastic under here. Do not think that there is a skid plate or anything like that on the Outback. It's more for looks and less for actual off-road functionality. Overall, I think it has a very traditional Subaru look, and they're certainly not upsetting anybody with the way the front end is styled on this car. Now, taking a look at the side profile of this Outback, we do have a roof rack, and the black plastic theme is continued along the top of here and also down along the bottom. It goes all the way along the car, and here at the back we do have a silver Outback badge. The Outback does have 8.7 inches of ground clearance, which I guess makes it in the more capable realm of these small SUVs, and they do have this very interesting design along the bottom here. Definitely looks cool, but again, this is all plastic. This is not any kind of rock slide or anything like that, so don't take it too seriously. The wheels and tires on this Outback Touring are a little bit nicer than what you're going to find on the base model. They are finished in a 225/60 on a 18-inch rim. Now you can also see this sticker, which is proudly featured on the outside of the Outback, which indicates that it was assembled at their plant in Lafayette, Indiana. Coming around to the back of this Outback, the black plastic theme is continued up here with the spoiler and down here with the lower bumper. This being the Touring model, it does come with a power lift gate, and actually coming down here at the bottom, the rear parking sensors are quite visible in the rear bumper. They do extend more than usual, I would say. Now, this Subaru Outback does have a LED daytime running light, as well as LED main headlight and high beam, a regular halogen for the turn signal, and then it also does get a very nice LED fog light down here in the bumper. The taillights are an LED design, but the turn signal is not, and neither is the reverse light. Down here you can see the symmetrical all-wheel drive badging. Subaru really leaning in hard to the off-road capabilities of this Outback. Now, this is not so noticeable from the interior of the Outback, but actually on the outside it is quite visible. These two cameras are used to center the vehicle in the lane. They're also used for the lane exit warning, and it does have steering correction on this model, but I think they're quite funny looking from the outside of the vehicle. Go ahead and look at the trunk of this Outback. I think it's appropriately sized for the class, fairly spacious. Now, it's also, I think, very well thought out. We do have an accessory floor mat in this one that reads Outback, but coming along here to the interior, we do have this lever, which is used to fold down the rear seats. This guy is used maybe to hold up a grocery bag or something, keep it from falling over. And then we do have a number of tie-down points in the trunk. I think there's at least 3 on each side. And then also we do have a 12-volt power receptacle right here. To get to the spare tire on this one, it's a little bit tricky. We've got a lot of layers to go through. So underneath the floor mat, underneath this panel, and now here we do have the jack and the tools that you need, but actually still we've got to remove this plastic piece, and then we finally do get to the spare, and it is a very decent size, so that's nice to have. So there is also a cargo cover, and you'll notice that it actually has 2 different positions that it can go into. This is the lower position, which is great for covering all the stuff in your trunk, and if you put it into the upper position, it does not quite hide everything in your trunk, but instead makes it nearly impossible to see out the rear window. Let's go ahead and take a look under the hood of this Subaru Outback. Now, this model is the base engine. They do offer the XT option on other, on most trim levels, and it does upgrade to a turbocharged motor. But this is a 2.5 liter horizontally opposed 4-cylinder, a traditional Subaru Boxer, and this one makes only 182 horsepower and 176 pound-feet of torque. Now that output is not too terribly disappointing, but you do have to rev it out to get to that peak torque figure. It actually comes at 4,400 RPM. So what that means in your day-to-day use is that it can feel a little bit sluggish off the line. Now you can see actually Subaru decided not to go with an engine cover on this model, which I think is fine. It's showing off their rather unique Boxer configuration, which does have the good benefits of being a lower center of gravity, as the cylinder heads are much lower than they normally would be in the vehicle, and then also it's considerably more compact. Obviously there is a little bit of trade-off in terms of the top-end complexity, but overall I think it's a unique engine choice, and for most people it isn't going to make too much of a difference compared to a traditional inline 4-cylinder. I think that the build quality on this Subaru, finished in autumn green metallic, is quite good. Very even panel gaps all around. Not necessarily the smallest, but matching on both sides, matching around the doors. And it's also very good on the back as well. Overall, very even between all three doors. This one is a little bit larger than normal, that's fine. And then on the trunk, it is rather even on both sides. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and step inside this Outback, and we'll go ahead and start it up. Now, first off, I've got to say the seating position is extremely comfortable. The interior is very well laid out, and this is indicative of a car that has been through many generations with continuous improvements. The interior on this particular model, the Touring, does have upgraded leather on a lot more surfaces, and it is spectacular. I am blown away by the interior design and quality of this car. I think it is unmatched in its class. And also this car does happen to be outfitted in one of my favorite colors of leather. This one is in Java Brown Napa. As you can see, the seat is finished in a beautiful brown leather with very nice white contrast stitching. This seat is on the Touring model fully ventilated, so all these holes here, it does have cooling and heated seats for both the front seats. Also some very strong bolsters on the side. The inspiration for these seats definitely do come from the WRX. I definitely think that this is a very supportive seat, and also extremely comfortable. It is power operated for both driver and passenger, and for the driver there are two memory positions. Coming down here to the door controls, we obviously have power mirrors, and they also are power folding here. We do have a power folding functionality. And then for the 4 buttons for the windows, not the best plastic here on these, but obviously it gets the job done, and very, very nice to have for automatic windows and these really excellent power adjustment for the mirrors. Now the steering wheel on the Outback does have a lot of control options. It does get a little bit busy. As you can see, there are a lot of buttons. But it is a heated steering wheel, which is great, and you can see the controls here for the driver assistance system, radar cruise control, and it does have some steering control as well. Coming up into the gauge cluster, it is not the most modern design, but it is nice that we do have a color screen in the middle and traditional mechanical gauges on the outside. On this display in the middle, there's all kinds of things you can pull up as you would expect. And also, what is really nice, you do get the speed limit right up here in the gauge cluster, which is very nice. And you will see also this green indicator, which looks like an eye. Now this Subaru actually is equipped with an infrared camera to make sure that your eyes are on the road. When that light is green, what that means is that it does have a visual lock on my eyes. So in theory, I am keeping my eyes on the road, and I am not driving distracted. Now, obviously, the centerpiece of this interior for the new Subaru Outback is this massive touchscreen, vertically oriented. There are a ton of features in here, but I have to say it is not the easiest to use. The menus are not particularly well laid out, and it can be a little difficult to find the setting that you're looking for at times. But it is very nice that even though they went to this big screen, they did maintain physical buttons for the climate control, and so when you push these, it just changes the temperature. But you can also see down here, you can click it, and you do get this full screen look at the climate control system. So you can see, you can turn on your seat heater and your seat ventilation. So there's no button for that. That is going to have to be manual. And I would like to point out that the seat ventilation on this car is quite good. It's very strong. We've got all these pages of apps, but we also have this page, which is car-related settings, which you might think would be in settings under car. But no, you would be wrong. They're two completely different places for car settings, which I do find to be quite weird. Now these knobs here for the volume control and changing the radio here, these definitely feel very plasticky. I'm a little worried about breaking them off, but they are very functional, and it's good to see that Subaru maintain physical buttons for the most important features, which are all on these physical buttons here. Now coming down here, we do have an electronic parking brake, which is operated this paddle style button here, and then in here we actually have a wireless charging tray, so you can stick your phone right in here and it will charge wirelessly. And then we also have 2 USB ports here. Then this is where you can plug in for the Apple CarPlay. The shifter here is a little bit misleading. This car does have a CVT, however you will see here there is an M indicating manual mode, and what this transmission is programmed to do is, in normal driving, it will tend to act more like a CVT, just choosing the optimal ratio for how you're driving. But if you go ahead and shift it over into M, it will indicate on the gauge cluster that there are 8 speeds, that this is an 8-speed transmission, and you actually do have paddle shifters and you can change through the 8 speeds, which is rather unique, but it is very well thought out and it works well, and a lot of Subaru models have had this for a number of years, so I'm not particularly worried about the longevity of this CVT. It seems to be pretty reliable. Over here on the right, we do have a button marked View, and this car does have front and rear cameras, so if you push that, you can bring that up, which is nice. Down here, we do have some extremely deep cup holders, which is nice. They could fit a very tall cup very securely, and then we also have this little rubber disc in case you have a cup that's not quite as tall. And then in the center console, you will find the storage area is rather small, and part of that is because it is taken up by a CD player. This car has a CD player, and it's right here in the center console. Don't see that feature on too many new cars today. On the passenger side here, it really gets fancy with the leather and stitching. We do have here the brown with the contrast white coming down into this little storage tray, which is nice, finished with the black, gloss black, coming back onto black with some more contrast stitching, and then finally down to the black plastic, which is here where the glove box is. So the glove box is a little bit smaller because you do have this storage tray up here, but it is a very wide glove box, even if it's not quite so deep. I think the leather work and stitching on this car is really well displayed here on the passenger side. Now up here we do have the standard dome lights and controls for the sunroof, which works just like a regular sunroof. Little sunglasses compartment, and then the sun visors that actually indicate right here on the front that it does slide. So if you were to pull this out and want to extend it, you do have that functionality. And I must add that this is one of the smoothest and most solid feeling sun visor extensions that I have ever experienced in any car. So something that is quite interesting about the Outback, I'm not sure if the earlier models had this as well. I'm assuming that they probably did, but the headrest is adjustable. It does go up and down like any normal headrest, and it does have a forward and back functionality, but it is not like most cars. It actually just tips forward like this, and if you push it all the way forward, then it allows it to release back. I think this operation is quite funny. All right, stepping into the back seat of the Outback, it is extremely spacious in here. I am blown away. And you may know that the 2020 Subaru Outback is 1.4 inches longer than the outgoing 2019 model. And all 1.4 of those inches went straight here to rear seat legroom. So car is 1.4 inches longer, 1.4 inches more rear legroom. So rear legroom is excellent. Headroom is excellent. There's a nice indentation in the roof for your heads. Rear seats very comfortable, still perforated, but no cooling functionality. I mean, that's really a high-end luxury feature at this point, and I wouldn't expect that. We do have 2-stage heated rear seats on this touring model, which is amazing, and the quality of the interior does not degrade at all coming into the back seat. We still get these beautiful contrast brown and black and brown leather on the doors, which is great. So very comfortable back seat, and we do have 2 USB Type A chargers, and then up here we do have a center armrest with cup holders. Now there's no pass-through on this, but I think that's okay because all of the seats will fold down flat. Now the center seat in the rear does not have a standard full-time seat belt. This is something that you often might see on a minivan or on a very large SUV like a Chevrolet Tahoe, something like that. The middle seat belt is actually fully retracted up here into the roof. So in order to use it, you do need to pass it through this loop and then secure the bottom end to this buckle before you can secure across the lap like this. Just thought I would point that out. That's a little bit different than normal. Although I think it's a good idea because most of the time, for most people, you aren't going to have a 5th person sitting here in the middle all the time. So it is nice to have it out of the way. Okay, so also the rear seats do have a manual tilting functionality, nice recline to these, which is very nice. However, normally this does present a problem in that the distance between the top of the seat and the cargo cover is changing, so that the cargo cover needs to cover a different area. But Subaru actually has solved this issue, and I'm going to go show you how they've done it. So what they've done here is actually there's an additional fabric piece behind the cargo cover. And what they have here are these 2 arrows. This arrow indicates where you should have it if the seat is in the most reclined position. And this arrow indicates where you should have it if the seat is all the way forward. So what you just do is you take this piece, and it's on a spring loaded with a little rubber stop, and you can move it so that you can cover more area. All right, so I've got the Subaru Outback out on the road, and definitely the ride is very comfortable. It's quite smooth, very refined. Definitely a more unique feature is the eye camera, so it keeps an eye on your eyes to make sure that you are looking at the road. And if you are not, say you look down, look at your phone, something like that, it will beep. And believe me, this car knows how to beep. There are so many different circumstances under which there's some kind of chime or beep to a degree which is definitely more than normal. The handling of this thing is probably a little bit better than most small SUVs. It definitely, the lower center of gravity from the Boxer engine certainly is helping us out, but it's no sports car. Just very comfortable. I can't live without the ventilated seats at this point. I really take full advantage of those. All right, so this is the base engine for the Outback, the 2.5 liter naturally aspirated. It is definitely not the fastest thing on the road. It'll do 0 to 60 in about 8.5 seconds, which is fine. But if you have a little bit of extra cash, I definitely would recommend you go with the turbocharged model. And there's not going to be a real detriment to the fuel economy like there was on the last gen Outback, where the top of the line model was the 3.6 6 cylinders. I do though enjoy the CVT. It is completely fades into the background. You wouldn't know that it's there. It's just a very smooth experience. It does occasionally let the engine rev a little bit higher than you would expect it to, but it's just making sure that you still have torque, and this engine does need to rev to get torque. So that does mean it can get a little bit drony and noisier, especially when you're going up a hill or trying to pass somebody at highway speeds. But considering it is a relatively efficient engine and this is not designed to be a fast car. I think it's perfectly acceptable. It's probably not at the top of its class there, though, in terms of the engine choices, that's for sure. So I actually have noticed while driving this car, it's done it twice already, basically the stability control will turn on and intervene. I don't know if there needs to be a little bit more calibration work on the stability control in this car, but definitely keep in mind that it is particularly aggressive. So for a car like this, I do think it's good to be on the safe side with the stability control, but in my opinion, I do think that it is a little bit too invasive, and it will grab the inside brake when you're going around a corner if it thinks you're going around too fast. Like that. All right, I'm coming up onto the freeway now. Acceleration is very, very mild, but it gets the job done. Let's see if I can get past this guy. Makes a lot of a racket, that's for sure. Definitely getting a little bit noisier here in the cabin now that we're up to speed. I would like to try out the highway driving aid, so let's go ahead and turn that all on. We've got the radar cruise. I can set my distance to the car in front. Let's choose that. Seems fine. So I'm setting my maximum speed, and steering is active. So let's see how long this thing is going to let me go without putting my hand on the wheel. I think that because it has the eye tracking system, it isn't going to get too mad at me as long as I'm looking forward and ahead of the road. Let's see what happens. Okay, that wasn't very long. I got a notification here to keep my hands on the steering wheel. But it seems to work great. We're not bouncing back and forth in the lane. That's good. You can really tell that this is not a first generation product. Subaru has been making small changes and improvements to the Outback for many years, and this really is at the top of its game, and it needs to be. This is one of the most competitive classes for cars sold in the US, and I do believe that the Outback is Subaru's best-selling model, and it's the best-selling for a reason. This is a really fantastic car. While it may not be the flashiest out there, I do think that the 2020 Subaru Outback offers amazing features and tech at a really great price, and overall makes it a very strong competitor in the very competitive small SUV segment.